Sometimes you heal, sometimes my eyes get wetter, waiting for these scars to heal, the scars on the inner. I scream and I cry, louder and louder. My voice just gets tired and my lifeline much thinner. That was the old me, the scared me, the dying. That was the hurt me, the bleeding me, the crying. The night that I changed is still so clear. I stumbled and fell, but I didn't care. No more crying, no cutting, and not one more blank stare. The pain was unbearable. What had I done? I haven't lived yet. Life had just begun. I awoke my guardian. To the clinic we went. I slept off the pills and awoke to resent. I felt so ill inside and out. I went to a center and learned all about how to be fine, how to live without the blades and the pills. It's all over now. I'm smiling but scared. Meet the new me. I shoot for the stars. Meet the new me. I'm doing fine. Meet the new me. I try and I strive. Meet the new me. I'm glad I'm alive.
Good afternoon, one and all. On behalf of the Student Council of Nirmala Niketan College of Social Work, myself Gargi Patil,
And myself, Deepshikha Sharma.
welcome you all to this session. Let's talk on the account of World Suicide Prevention Day that was on 10th September.
So today on board we have with us Ms. Madhuri Dadia from Safe Space India and Ms. Sunitha Ramchandra from Samaritans Mumbai. Our principal Lidwin ma'am and also Elvis sir, our student council convener. So before beginning the session, we would like to request our principal ma'am, Dr. Lidwin Dias, to address all the participants who have joined in today.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon and a very warm welcome to all our students, eminent speakers, staff, and the Student Council team for organizing this program on the occasion of World Suicide Prevention, which was celebrated on 10th September. We at the College of Social Work are having this event today. The theme selected is Never Let a Stumble on the Road to be End of Your Journey. This theme is very relevant, especially during this present pandemic situation. I extend a very warm welcome to our speakers, Ms. Sunitha Ramchandra from Samaritan and Ms. Madhuri Dadia from Safe Space, who will be sharing their valuable insights on how to prevent suicide. I thank the Student Council very specially for organizing this program, though we are not able to come to in the college campus and have it as an offline, because I remember last year it was in a very grand thing where all the posters were exhibited in the college and various events were held. But however, the team has made it possible that we can have it even on an online mode. So thank you especially the teachers who are guiding these students to have this program. Now, suicide is a growing problem and the numbers are very shocking. According to the World Health Organization, every 40 seconds, someone takes their own life. Now, why do people, especially young people, commit suicide? What will be our role in preventing suicide? How do I understand myself and cope with situation in what we need to reflect and constantly work towards? Dear students, you have chosen a profession to help others, and it is important that you help yourself and develop positive health in order to help others. Very often we come across people, especially youth, who say, I want to end my life. I don't see meaning in my life. We need to ask, why is it so? And why are we not having the resistance to problems and challenges? Why we want to end ourselves or end our life? Here I would like to ask you all one question. Do we want to destroy or kill anyone whom we love sincerely? I repeat, do we want to destroy or kill anyone whom we love sincerely? Or do we want to destroy something that we like the most? Okay, I'm sure all of you are thinking over this question, and I'm confident the answer would be no. Okay, it is no mainly because we can't destroy someone or something that we love. If that is so, can we destroy our own self, which is part of our being, which we have nurtured all through our life and appreciated? Yes, we need to love ourselves and believe in oneself first in order to help others. There is a saying that goes, there is a crack in everything, that's how the light gets in. Okay, when there is a crack, the light comes in. Thus, it is perfectly okay for each one of us to feel sad, angry, annoyed, frustrated, scared, or anxious. Having feeling like this doesn't make you a negative person. It makes you a human person. What we need to do is to develop a self-awareness, manage one's own self by having self-management, grow in empathy, develop social skills to relate well with all people, to be motivated by setting goals and aiming to achieve it. If we are emotionally strong, then we can help our own self and others and prevent the suicidal tendencies and overcome various mental health issues. Our eminent speakers today will be giving us insights on this particular topic, and I'm sure it is going to help each one of us in order to see what is our role in preventing suicide and how can we create awareness in the society. I want to end with a quote from Henry Lord, and I had said this in my last, sometime back in the other webinars too, which I liked it the most. It goes like this: my dark days made me stronger, or maybe I already was strong and they made me prove it. Yeah, I repeat it. My dark days made me stronger, or maybe I already was strong and they made me prove it. Yes, my dear students, we need to believe in ourselves that we are stronger and we can overcome all challenges. So, friends, let us be convinced of our strength and strive to constantly be aware and grow in it, and also try to create an awareness and help others in order to cope up with the situation, especially when we are talking about the suicide, to prevent suicide and also to extend a helping hand. I wish the organizers and speakers all the best, and I'm sure that this particular session, which is going to be maybe 2 hours session, is going to benefit each one of us and will give us the things to reflect and also to act on. Thank you.
Now, I would like to welcome Miss Madhuri Dadia from Safe Space India. Madhuri ma'am handles the training and development initiatives at Safe Space. Ma'am is a counseling psychologist. She is a certified suicide first responder and a certified tutor to deliver SFA, that's Suicide First Program. Ma'am has a 14 years of experience in the field of training and consulting. She has worked with the schools, corporates, as well as entrepreneurs led businesses in small and medium enterprise segments. Ma'am will introduce us today with the suicide first aid. We welcome you, ma'am.
Should you be flooded with unpleasant memories, or should you feel triggered and uncomfortable, distressed at any point in time? Feel free to call these numbers and get yourself the assistance that you may need. Uh, what we were discussing just a while ago, and the principal ma'am, I think, highlighted it so well when she said that, it's not just the track, but also letting the light inside, which is so important. So here we're going to talk about two different elements. One, the track and what the track really means, and two, the light and what light. Who is going to show me that light at the end of the tunnel? Because clearly, the fact that if I have thoughts of suicide, seeing the light seems to be slightly difficult for me at this point in time. Um, the theme today says never let a stumble upon the road to be the end of your journey. And that tells me that all of us are set out on a journey. A journey would be pleasant or unpleasant based on our experiences. It's the same journey for others, but maybe a different route for somebody else. That brings me to help you understand this subject called suicide, and what really are the core beliefs when we speak about suicide first aid. We thoroughly, purely, consciously believe that this entire thing is on three beliefs. Number one, most people thinking of suicide do not want their lives to end. They want the pain to stop. For those of you who've made the posters, commendable. See what the story your posters tell you. Therefore, most people thinking of suicide let others know consciously or unconsciously. And so, if we knew the signs and how to respond, suicide has to be one of the most preventable deaths. Now, when people read this, most of them feel like, but that's not been the case so far, right? So let's try and again understand, where is the track and who becomes the light, therefore. In India, every 4 second, like Principal Ma'am mentioned, that every 40 seconds there is a death by suicide. There are 785 deaths in a day, and we lose one youth an hour. And predominantly, India prides upon the fact that it has the highest youth population, making us believe that the next 10, 15, 20 years are going to be glorious because we are all going to be at our peaks. Having said that, if mental health has been a concern, if that's been on the rise, especially after the pandemic, currently the way the situation looks and the way the mental health conditions are, if we are unable to address that and give people the help that they need, there are chances that we may not still feel pride about the fact that we have highest youth population. Now, when we speak about suicide, and when we speak about a pandemic today, the Lancet research says that suicide is likely to become a more pressing concern as the pandemic spreads and has longer term effects on the general population, the economy, and the vulnerable groups. Therefore, preventing suicide needs to be done urgently. And when I say urgently, I almost mean as of yesterday. Now, how is it that, we look at suicide? All of us say, look at suicide as an act or an event. Yes, you're right. It is an act, but it's an outcome. It's a result. It is a behavior that you see. What happened before the behavior is most of us do not understand because we don't know what really happens in that situation. Research says that after a pandemic, there are chances that PTSD will hit, which is post traumatic stress disorder, which is the mental health condition whereby a person may have flashbacks or nightmares about what they went through, causing severe anxiety and uncontrollable thoughts about the event, making them feel almost loss of control over themselves and the situations. Now, globally, World Health Organization says that 30 to 50% of the population will be affected by a disaster suffered from severe psychological distress. And when I say PTSD, it is one of the psychological distresses, making individuals more at risk, more vulnerable to suicidal ideations, attempt death by suicide almost 2 to 5 times. Now, when we look at these numbers, clearly all of us feel like, oh my God, where is it that we are heading? And clearly, this is a ripple effect. When I say it's a ripple, if I put a stone in the water, I know that there are smaller ripples earlier and that they become bigger ripples, and that's where forms the waves eventually. What we do not understand is that it's even a single suicide that has a massive impact, not just on the family or the loved ones around, but also on the larger aspect, which is the society in general. So, what exactly is suicide? Suicide is a result of intolerable pain, also termed as psychic. Now, when I use the word suicide, when I use the word psychic, and when I use the word pain, physical pain we can see. I know that my legs are hurting. I know that my back is hurting. I know if I get an X-ray, I'll be able to see what there is. But when I talk about suicide, please note that it is a result. It's an outcome of what? Of an intolerable pain. But can I see that pain? If I can't see the pain, if I can't understand the pain, if I don't know what's going on, how will others know? And therefore, if others want to know, they've got to do something about it, to come and maybe ask me, talk to me, do something wherein I can explain that, look, it's not just fever, it's fever coupled with so many other things. Okay, now where does suicide really come from? Okay, there are various elements, but this is a very, very important slide because we're saying that there is underlying vulnerability already in a person. What is that? There's either trauma, there's either PTSD, there's either so much stress that your body is released a lot of cortisol. Cortisol technically is a hormone, a chemical that helps us keep ourselves safe from a situation of physical danger. But the moment that danger becomes so much and too much cortisol may lead us to constantly be in fight, flight, freeze mode, making us feel, making us so hard to understand logically what's going on. Now, this is the underlying vulnerability. What is a root cause of suicide? Where is the root of it? There's so much shame for a certain behavior. There's so much humiliation, whether it's public humiliation, and we're actually living in an honor-based society. So when we are talking about an honor-based society, we say that, gender differentiation, we say that men are supposed to behave in a certain way, and therefore so much expectation. Men, you can't cry, you can't complain, you can't crib, you can't do so many things, isn't it? Where else do they go? Yeah, shaming. When we talk about, let's say, the LGBTQI community, because we are unprepared with what to do, how do you support them, the amount of shame that our own first circle puts us through, and that makes us feel so humiliated that I don't know what else there is a way to escape from the situation. The fourth most important element is asking about suicide. Research says that 50% of people who died by suicide were never asked about um, prior attempts, if they've done, or they've had thoughts of suicide. And most suicides have also happened under the care of a therapist. This makes all of us shocked that when I study therapy, when I study psychology, when I study counseling, I am taught therapies, theories, I am taught the generic, aspects of the brain and things like that. But I'm not really taught how do I ask suicide, because at the back of my mind, there already is grilled that if I ask suicide, I may plant the seeds in the mind of the person. We will come to that as well, whether it's a myth or a fact, and you will know in time to come. Other risk factors associated with are alcohol, and 25% alcohol is the most lethal for suicide. And research has proven that all those deaths by suicide have been under the influence of alcohol or substance. Okay, and we will talk about the alcohol in a bit, or maybe there's abundant research there. What we need to understand here, therefore, is that it's not just one aspect or a behavior or an eventuality that I'm talking about. There is culmination of so many things that I need to be careful of, that I need to note before somebody comes and shares their point of view, saying, hey, listen, I think I'm having thoughts of suicide. Most likely, what is our first response? I leave it to you at that thought. Most of the time we say, "Arey, pagal hai kya? Arey, aisa thodi hota hai." No, no, no. Oh, come on, please. This is such a usual thing that you keep saying. Karna hai na? Theek hai. Okay. All of these are absolute no's, and which is why we also in the suicide first aid workshop talk about the importance of language. I want you to know that suicide is decriminalized in the country. There is an act, even though until 3-4 years ago it was still a criminal offense, but mid of 2018 we've decriminalized suicide, and therefore commit suicide is absolutely incorrect language. You commit murder, you commit theft, you do not commit suicide, you die by suicide. Use suicided, because it's a verb, it's an action. And this is one takeaway I want all of you who are watching this to know and note. Yes, we are not going to become moral police, language police here. What we're trying to do is, if I have to be a part of the solution, and that's the fact, right? Today we're talking about let's talk, which means I want to provide a solution. But if I am a part of the whole trigger, if I'm the part of the whole stigma around the subject, I'm actually a part of the problem and not the part of the solution. So one quick thing is, going forward, no saying commit suicide. We are saying it is died by suicide, or suicides, or suicided. Most of us think here that suicide is more like an on and off switch, and that, "Arey, kab hua malum nahi pada." I want you to know that suicide is not impulsive. Like our core belief said, that all those who have thoughts of suicide will let others know, consciously or unconsciously. And so, if you, me, teachers, principals knew that this was a sign, are we prepared to have that caring conversation with the person to offer them a third option? And we will come to that third option. But I want you to know here that suicide is not an on and off switch, it's not impulsive. Okay, there is enough and more evidence that tells us that it's an interplay of so many phenomenons. All right, so what is it that is done in a suicide first aid? We understand what first aid is, right? There is cleaning the wound, applying a band-aid, making sure that the person is given temporary relief, and yet taken to the doctor to make sure that they get the professional help that is required. I want all of us to understand here that suicide first aid is exactly that. When I know that somebody has confided into me or shared with me that they are distressed or have thoughts of suicide, number one, am I able to ask them suicide? Number two, what is their response? Yes or no? Do I know what I need to do next? So this entire episode, this entire workshop helps you get trained on multiple aspects of things, and things that you can do if somebody confides into you. What do we see here? We ideally see here extremely happy faces. We see that they all seem to be extremely delighted. Maybe there's some great news coming their way. If I was to ask you guys, tell me who from here has had a mental health breakdown? Who from here has had a painful marriage? Who from here has maybe lost a child after the fourth attempt? Who from here is living with somebody who has a mental health concern? Who from here do you think has thoughts of suicide? And I can almost visualize all of you nodding your head, saying no, 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 or looking closely to the faces, maybe guessing, oh, the one in the black, or maybe the one in the pink, she doesn't look that happy, etc. Right? It's not that. The suicide first aid workshop is a population based approach. It's not about a high risk group or a low risk group. It's about being there to reach out to the person and telling them, let's talk, telling them, hey, listen, I'm there. Okay. But after being there, are you ready to what's going to happen next? All right. So let's try and understand where does suicide really come from. And I've said this, emphasized on this so many times, that it is the result, it's a behavior. But before that, what is it that happens? How is it that a person goes from no thoughts of suicide to thoughts of suicide? And research says that it's not just one factor, it can be culmination of so many other factors, an interplay of so many factors that makes a person go from no thoughts of suicide to thoughts of suicide. Okay, and we call it the continuum of suicide. It's on a continuum. If I was to understand that there are biological factors, if I was to understand that there are psychological factors, there is a case of trauma, there is a case of abuse, there is a case of rape, there is a case of, let's say, certain learning difficulty. If I know that there is past history, if I was told that I was abused as a child, if I was told that, I had a partner and he threatened me that he's going to release all our pictures and private chats, and for all you know, he did one or two to blackmail me and things like that. So if I was to understand that my current life events, which you see on the right side, is today makes or breaks me to help me maintain my sense of thought and behavior. Okay, but if I was to reflect and go back and understand that it's not just the current events, it's not something that happened yesterday that drove me to do the behavior and therefore die by suicide. There is biological factors, psychological factors, and past history that I need to delve into. And we all know that while we may have so many friends, very rarely do we really want to confide into somebody and tell them the real aspects of my life. What cracked me up, literally, so to speak, right? And so, if I was to understand this, and like Madhuri told earlier, that there are signs that people give out consciously or unconsciously, my question to you is, as a layperson, if you were to spot the signs, if you were to pick on the signs and be able to talk to the person who is distressed, would you be able to do that? Would that also change how you interact with the person? Therefore, with what perspective are you looking at? Or is your mindset still telling you, oh my God, no, it's just, so used to listening to this. Oh, this is so usual. Oh, he always says this. Oh, she always does this. Are we still having our minds telling us the judgments or the reports or the boundaries of the person? Do we feel prepared to have such a conversation with a person, keeping these judgments aside and yet being there 100% for the person to give them the help that they need? And this is something I want all of you to note down. The help that they need, it's not your help, it's not your talk, it's not about you, it's about them. It's about what this means for them. The pain for them could be more painful than what you may conceive of it, or for what you may understand of it, right? What could those signs be? And at Safe Space, when we do this workshop, we say that all of us as human beings, we are social animals, we are social beings, and we pick on off people. If our mom's upset, you just say that, Mom, something is not right. You never say this, what happened? Or if our friend says, oh no, I don't think I want to go to the club, nahi maza hai yaar, I don't feel like it. And you say that, chalo, theek hai, ek baar na bol diya. But you see repeatedly 10 times the person said no, 2 times the person said no repeatedly. And the person looks away. There are certain things which are odd about this person. Are you able to pick on those signs and have to have that conversation with the person? And we say that all of us have our senses. So let's try and understand what these signs are in relation to using all our senses. So, number one, what might we sense the person is feeling while you are having an interaction with the person? What do we sense that the person is feeling at this point in time? And when I say feelings, it's more, you can see through the voice, the behavior, the body language, but we see that there is a sense of worthlessness, hopelessness. This person is sad or depressed, or maybe extremely anxious, or maybe very, very angry. At one point, he's so numb, doesn't want to say much. The other point, he's so indifferent. The other point, he's extremely elated and super excited about everything in life. And you feel like, really is okay, then, this response was a tad bit too much, I guess so, but maybe. Yeah. So then that's one thing that you sense. What might you hear the person say? And like we said, the person consciously or unconsciously will give out the signs to you because there is so much pain that the person is going through. And that pain is something that they always feel at the back of their mind is something that you may not understand. And therefore, they will unconsciously or consciously say things like, oh, I don't want to be here anymore. I can't take it anymore. No one cares. Soon the problems will be over. Everyone is better off without me. Oh, I think it's okay. I'll anyways be replaced so soon and nobody's going to miss me. Or, it's the organization, right? And I can be filled up. My position can be filled in. That's fine. Or, I want to go see Nani. We know that 10th results are over and, that the person's grandparents are not here. And the child suddenly says, I want to go see my grandmother at their house and I'm going. Or they have a habit of writing books down, writing some stuff down, and suddenly you realize that um okay, then what do I do next, and do I really have to question him and things like that. What might we see a person doing? We see that the person does a certain kind of behavior, that is maybe extreme intake of substances like alcohol, drugs, putting affairs in orders, probably telling you that, listen, I have my cat, mini me, right, and I am so fond of her, but since you're so used to mini me, please take her with you. My family can't manage it. So once I'm gone, keep the cat with you. Most likely, a response then would be, "Nahi, yeah, please, I'm not going to take the responsibility. That's not how it works. Nahi, please, yeah, वापस मत दे. It's too much work. Yeah, घर का काम भी बहुत होता है. I can't do it." What we completely miss is the fact that the person said, "Once I'm gone," and what do you mean by saying once I'm gone? Where do you want to go? Where are you going? Traveling somewhere? What does that mean? We see that the person's picking fights, person's driving rashly, the person's maybe trying and testing certain means to see if could work for them. What might we learn has happened to the person? So through our conversations and discussions, we get to know that the person has something that has happened to the person, and that could be, let's say, lost their jobs, maybe there could be bullying, maybe they could be learning difficulties growing up, maybe they could be subjected to domestic violence, or maybe seen it, witnessed it, been a part of it, maybe has lost a loved one already. um, we need to understand that while we are having this conversation, we go across through all these signs and try and pick and see where the person takes off from, and what is it that is so strikingly different about this person, therefore, which is something you've never seen in the person. It could be extreme crying. So after you explore, you further investigate, you further connect with the person, and that can happen only once there is deeper level of conversation and communication that happens with the person. And where does that start from? That starts from the fact that the person can trust you. The person knows that if I tell him or her anything, it's not going to go out, and at the same time, I am going to get certain help. I will feel supported. So what is it that you can do when you speak about giving the first aid to the person? You could be a friend, you can be a teacher, you can be somebody in the placement cell, you can be a therapist. Now most people will say, but Madhuri, there are so many therapists, how would I know? I see so many patients, how would I know what is so different? I'm a teacher, I teach in FY, SY and TY, and not just in social work class, but also in a psychology class. How do I really pick? I want to tell you, as a teacher, as a friend, there can be a role that's way beyond. And like we just studied, there are so many signs that you can go through and pick on the person. It can just simply be getting that time out to try and speak to the person. But what do you speak and what do you do? There are four very, very simple things. Number one, asking the question. Asking suicide is so important. Number two, listening. Once the person starts to talk, share, you listen to the person, exploring different options. Today, we know that the person has only one option in their mind. What are the other options that we are going to support him, help him explore? And safety plan, which is so important to be done with the person. So let's try and understand what this really means by asking a question. And most of the times, like I said even earlier, people say that, Madhuri, if we ask somebody suicide and say, you know what, listen, sometimes when people say things like, it's better if I'm gone, nobody needs me, and I know nobody misses me. They're thinking of suicide. Are you thinking of suicide? And how can I ask this? What if I'm planting the idea in their head? Most of you will say, yes, yes, I think that's right. It's a big risk. We are putting that person in risk. I want to tell you that it's absolutely a myth. There is no research that proves that by asking suicide, you can actually get the person to do the behavior. If I was to ask you, hey, listen, I'm failing my by about 10 marks, will you kind of share your 10 marks with me and see if I can just scrape through the year? Very difficult, right? It may sound funny, but all I'm saying is, let's say if I'm running out of money, and if I tell you, yaar, महीने का मेरे को 10,000 चाहिए, can you just give it to me for the next 6 months? फिर मैं I'll pay it up to you. So difficult, right? You can't. You will immediately say, हाँ, but okay, पर मेरे पास अभी इतना. We are logical beings, and we are capable to think. So asking somebody doesn't necessarily make them to do things. In fact, research says that when you ask suicide so directly, so compassionately, so calmly, there are chances that the person may respond to what that may be and what the pain feels for him. There is a chance that he may say that, yeah, I have been thinking of suicide. Or they will say, no, it's not necessarily suicide. I don't want to end my life, but it's just that this current situation makes me feel sick. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to make of this. I don't know how do I manage this. I'm just so overwhelmed. It just makes me lose my sleep. My relationships are being affected. So either of the cases, yes or no, do we know how to continue and move ahead? You are letting the person know by asking the question that you are there for them. And if you are a first responder, it keeps you at a position of authority that they can trust you and trust you that you will give them the help that they need. And therefore, planting the idea in their head is a myth. You must ask suicide as directly but compassionately to the person to at least understand where they are. Like we said, it's a continuum, right? From no thoughts to thoughts. The fact that they are thinking of suicide, the journey has already happened, and therefore your giving them the support is a pressing urgent situation today. What do you do next? So once the person says, yes, I have been thinking of suicide, what do you respond? I want you guys to know that when this is happening, the person is listening to you, the person is watching you, and if you look that bit uncomfortable to handle that, the person may shut down and never open up to anyone going forward. So what do you do when the person says, yes, I have been having thoughts of suicide? Are you able to continue the conversation and say, listen, this is important, and I want to know what's happening. Let's talk about it. Will that get the person talking? Or if the person says, nahi, nahi, chhod yaar, ye nahi karna hai, jaane de, I don't think. Are you still able to say, listen, because I care for you and I think you're important. You can speak to me. Let's do. And then when the person starts talking, how do you listen to the person? You understand what the person needs. All of us have needs for love, needs for recognition, needs for permission to talk, needs for safety, needs for commitment. All of us have needs which are unmet today. And because they are not met, it takes me to where I am. So, how do you listen? You don't listen to what your mind is telling you, you listen to what he means or she means by telling you what it is. And by doing that, all you got to do is, okay, I'm there, I'm listening. Okay. So, what did that make you feel? All right. When you're genuinely present and listening to the person, it literally is like wearing an oxygen mask. When you're in an aircraft, they give you that instruction, right? Wear your own mask first. And then when you are okay, will you be able to give support and help to somebody else? Okay. So, you should listen more, like we say, it's more empathetically for what it means for them and not for what you feel about the situation. So it's all about them and not about you, with complete intention that you're here to support and be a part of the solution and not the problem. How will the person know that you've heard them? You will maybe paraphrase, you will repeat, you will maybe summarize what the person said, you will give them another opportunity to share what else it means for them. Then you help them explore different options. Today, what is the option? They're only thinking about ending their own lives. And that's the option they have, because both life and death are painful for them. Correct? But what is the third option that they have? If you look at that switch, we said suicide is an on and off switch. What is the third option? The third option here is pause. Why? Because they haven't had the time, the strength to manage exploring other options that could help them stay safe today. Have they spoken to anyone as of yet? No. You are the first one they are telling you that they are having thoughts of suicide. And luckily you responded very well. And if that has happened, there are chances that he might want to tell you everything, because he feels so light, he feels so open, he feels so happy that there is somebody who understands the situation, right? So when the person is telling you this, you listen to them, you ask them questions, you take them through it step by step, you be there with them physically, emotionally, mentally at the same page, and not on your cell phone, not looking away, not responding to somebody else, but giving them all your attention with the intention that you want to help them and help them in a way that they need. Help them explore options, which is the third option, that is the pause. And that's the biggest option they will want to explore today, because they didn't know that they could take that time to think through and explore different opportunities. And after the person has told you what it is, you do the safety planning, and we cover a complete safety planning template here where we talk about what needs to be done. Essentially, the person's going through so much pain, whether it's emotional or physical, both of them needs to be addressed. Correct? So now you and I know that we are not professionals, we are first aiders. We are there to support them in their journey so that you're able to give them the professional help and make them reach the professional helpers. So what needs to be done in case of physical pain? Let's say if there is mental health breakdown, they don't even have a diagnosis. We are so used to saying, oh, he's depressed. But who gave you the diagnosis? Is it a clinical diagnosis? Did a psychiatrist tell you that this is the concern? No, it's not. We are just able to use this word all and sundry, but that's a misnomer. That's absolutely incorrect, right? So we need to figure out what is the concern, and that you can figure only when you do the listening piece in the best possible manner to speak to them and get them to listen to their side of the story with no judgments and no intrusion. So we do a complete safety planning for the person, and we also train you to use the safety planning template for the person, which is so important because that gives them the ground that I'm safe now, I'm okay now, and that in future if I ever have these thoughts, if I do these activities, I'm going to become, I can help myself out. Are you equipped with the resources to share the person? For instance, these are the resources that we talked about, right? There are helplines, there are hospitals with wards, there are counselors, there are psychiatrists, there are more, considering we're in times of COVID and pandemic. Everybody seems to be working in close connection in the mental health field. So there is help that is given, if at all, and you get them connected to so many doctors or helplines, correct? All of us say that we all grew up with certain belief systems, and we learned certain things about life as we grew up, right? And some of these are, people who talk about suicide don't do it. There is a kehwat, right? It says that garajte badal baraste nahi hai. I want you to know that you as a first responder must take a person seriously if he says that he has been having thoughts of suicide. You and I cannot give out a report card to them saying, hey, you know what, I think you just talk about it. So are you saying that you've got to do it to prove it? Their self-talk says that. We are nobody to judge them and gauge them. Rather, take it extremely seriously that the person who talks about suicide, don't do it. No, what if he does? Did I do enough to support them? A suiciding person clearly wants to die. We just said with our core beliefs that the person who has thoughts of suicide do not want to die, they want the pain to end. So we need to explore to begin with, what is that pain? What does that pain mean for the person? Most suicide occur with little or no warning. We also got to know that that isn't true, right? There are conscious unconscious warning signs that the person may give out. Checking against your own attitude towards suicide and mental health is so important, because that will make you sort of go out of your way to really trust the person and get them the help that they need. When we spoke about the question earlier and saying, you know what, when somebody says yes, they have thoughts of suicide, what do? Let's say the person says, oh, no, 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 I'm not, no, it's not suicide. Do you still take that seriously? What do you do in a case like that when somebody says no? Do you just leave the case? You do not leave the case. You still continue. You go back to the listening piece. You tell them again that, listen, you know what? I've known you, or I see that this is what your pattern is. I see that this is how your behavior has been. And that sort of makes me feel that somewhere or the other, there are thoughts of suicide that are concerning you, and that concerns me. So, do you want to talk about it? Why would you say one, two, three, four if you think these are not thoughts? Right? So, you have to be ready to continue having that conversation, irrespective of whether the person says yes or no. And that you can only tell once you ask the question. And asking the question is something that we train you on, because that is one of the most difficult um, parts for all of us. And like I said, we could be teachers, we could be non-therapists, we could be other professionals, we could be anybody. If I'm able to spot the signs, pick on, I should have the right skills to speak to the person and give them the help that they need. Right? So skills like listening, exploring, safety planning, all of these can be taught, they can be learned. We do train you on that. But when your own belief systems, when your own attitudes to genuinely reach out to somebody comes in the way of reaching out to the person, there are chances that you may miss the bus by a bit. And the impact that that may have on the other person who's just shared that, yes, I have thoughts, will be lifelong. Because, anyways, they think there's nobody who understands me. You are posing as somebody who will understand. So keep your own attitude towards mental health and suicide in check and see what you genuinely feel about them. Okay. And therefore, why is it important for you to become a first responder? Okay. Now, I'm told that, this was organized by the student council and this was a part of the social work. I want all of you to know that if you're a social worker, you will most likely stumble upon somebody who has gone through severe trauma. Okay. And therefore, that makes them at a higher risk of suicide. Would you know how to support them? If you're a psychology student, we know that there is no specific program on crisis intervention, and this is called a crisis intervention. If ever, as a therapist, as a fresher, when you come out and you know somebody, you picked on the sign and somebody said, yes, I have thoughts of suicide, would you know how to respond and do the safety planning with them to make sure they are safe for now? If you're a teacher and a student came to you and told you that they are distressed and they're having thoughts of suicide, would you know how to respond? We do understand that teachers are playing a commendable role of doing so many things online, but it's also important that a student is the first point of contact for somebody to really maybe open up. So, as a teacher, as a principal, as a social worker, as a student, placement, somebody comes to you and displays different behavioral aspects. Do you take that time to speak to them, or is it only limited to the resume? Right? Or do we speak about the person to the company with the offhand information that we have because we are always loaded with work? Therefore, it's so important that you get yourself certified as a first responder, which will add to your skill. And when you're genuinely going to reach out to them, there are chances that you will respond and not react to when the person opens up to you and tells you they have thoughts of suicide. Sometimes, when you also deliberate further, you realize it's not just gone to thoughts. Some of them may also end up telling you, I've done it once myself. Are you ready to know or respond in a manner that they feel more supported and helped? Is the thought that I want you to think about. So therefore, to sum it up, this is an intervention. It's called suicide first aid, right? And as an interventionist, it is an important role that you play to connect them to the professional help. By being a first responder, I want you to know that you are not a therapist. All right, you are not somebody who is know all and all of the knowledge. This is an ocean, and there is a subject called suicidology, I must tell you that, right? So this is just maybe like a pin in the in the ocean, so to speak. But if somebody has been showing signs of distress, if you're a first aider, You will reach out to them, but make sure that they still get the emotional professional help that they need. And that is what makes you an interventionist, because we know that suicide is like on a continuum. Somebody can move from no thoughts to thoughts depending on biological, psychological, past history, current life events, maybe a mix of everything that's come down to the person. Institutions, colleges, we recommend that you develop policies, you create an environment. We are called safe space, right? We genuinely believe that you and me together can become safe spaces for somebody else if you really give them the help that they need. It's not about you, it's about them. So, as an organization, as an institution, create an environment where people can have conversations around mental health, around stress, around PTSD, around suicide, so that you can give them the help that's required. Name calling, shaming people actually adds to their trouble. Like we said, that's the root cause of suicide in the previous slides. So, that can actually get them so much isolated. They may feel like, God, there's nobody who understands me even home, and let alone here, let alone workplace, and therefore I don't think I'm important. So rather than making somebody feel isolated, take it on you to make the person feel safe. When you provide them the safety, the security that they need, there are chances that they may come out to you and seek more professional help with you, to make sure that you understand them, they feel understood, and they get the help that is required. And therefore, if someone was at risk, you can help. Feel prepared with the first aid training. It's a 3-hour workshop. We do it every Saturday. It's a formal certification. Safe Space is the only organization that has a proper certified course. We have a collaboration with the National Center for Suicide Prevention UK, and the certificate is from there. And worldwide, you have tutors who are actually trained to deliver this workshop. These are our coordinates. Feel free to reach out to us. That's our website. We're on Instagram. DM us. Follow us. We are on YouTube. We want to kind of make certain mental health concerns like a part of daily conversations, part of family conversations. So we try and release certain videos which are non-jargonish and so much more easy to understand. We are on LinkedIn. We are on Facebook. That's our email addresses. And that's me for now. Thank you so much for a patient reading. I think we are open for questions now. I was told about 10-15 minutes that we could have for Q&A, so I'm ready for the questions.
Thank you, ma'am, for this insightful session. It was really nice, and to remind us that there's pause button as well. I would now
Absolutely.
request, yeah. So I would now request everyone who are live on YouTube to put your question answers on comment box, so ma'am can shortly answer that. Thank you.
So I just wanted, Dipshika, I don't know if people can hear me, but we didn't want to speak about any specific cases. But having said that, when I was talking to Sonia ma'am, she said that people may have a lot of questions regarding the language. How do you speak to the person, or what do you do? And that's why we said, right, words like suicidal doesn't give
Yeah.
any indication, right? When you say
Yeah.
commit is more like a crime, and since suicide is criminalized, we need to let people know that even though there is in any eventuality, they deserve the hospitalization and hospital help. So we don't have to wait for the cops and all of that. The cops will come, they do their work, but that doesn't mean a hospital doesn't admit you. A lot of
Yeah.
times when people come to us, they say, no, I don't want to go to the hospital because, case ho jayega. We have to tell them that nahi, case nahi hoga. It's not a criminal offense anymore. Right? So
Yeah.
going forward, all of us need to know that commit suicide is no, no. Died by suicide, dies by suicide, suiciding, suicided, suicides are all formal ways, okay ways of talking about the subject.
Okay, ma'am. So there is few questions coming in. I'll just read out. So
Sure.
it's from what is the role of a student social worker in suicidal cases?
Right. So, thanks for the question. I think it's so important. What I want you to do is, I want you to go back to your subjects. What is it that you're going to talk about as a social worker? What typically are your topics? You're going to talk about issues pertaining to larger part of the society. Okay, now we understand that there's prevention, there is intervention, and there's postvention. Prevention is a community based effort, government effort to make sure that you're preventing from something to happen, and that is with force, that is with legalities, right? Intervention is our individual effort to stop something from happening. And postvention is after something has happened, what is it that you can do? So, Safe Space also has bereavement support group called We Hear You. As a social worker, you are going to work with typical cases of abuse, trauma, and you don't know where on that spectrum is the person on and what is the pain there for. So, if you understand suicide first aid and that response, there are chances that you can keep the person safe for now because he's anyways vulnerable to having thoughts of suicide, considering that there already is psychological trauma that he's gone through or biological trauma that he's gone through. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah. So there's one more question coming in. If any suicidal person come to us for any guidance, then how to deal with a particular client?
Right. So that is exactly what we cover in our workshop called Suicide First Aid. It's a
Yeah.
certification. So there is, like we did the model, right? You ask the question, you listen, you explore options, and you safety plan. Okay, but how do you do this? There is a way, there is a workbook, there is a technique by which we ask the question, we get you to practice it. Okay, so for now, to answer your question, how do you help them is by asking if they have thoughts of suicide. It's by making yourself available to them so they can speak to you, by being non-judgmental and empathetic with the person to make sure that you are genuinely interested in their story. You know, if somebody says, oh, don't tell anyone that I told you I have thoughts of suicide or I've attempted, kisi ko mat bolna, that is a no-no, right? And that's the biggest clause of confidentiality. Some people feel, array, counselors are breaking confidentiality. It's important for us to know that we let them know, if I see you at risk or somebody around you at risk, I will have to let somebody know. You decide who should know about this, but somebody needs to know. We are interventionists. We are with the person for the 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 1 hour, 3 hours of a call, 5 hours of a call. But after that, the person goes back in his own environment, right? So, how are you going to know what's going to happen next? It's important that somebody is onboarded and brought in with the plan. So, all of this is what we also train you on, and we discuss that in the safety planning bit.
Yeah, so there's a common question coming in, which is uh, if someone tells you they are thinking about suicidal thoughts, then how do you go about it? I mean, how do you react to it? So
Okay, so
what
if
do you
you
do?
right, so same thing, right? If somebody tells you that they are having thoughts of suicide, bingo, you know that you've got to ask them and say, all right, you have thoughts of suicide. What is it? Let's talk about it. Okay, are you ready to talk to them to begin with? Do you have that orientation to speak to them to begin with? What if they start telling you things that you don't have an answer for? That makes you more panicky, more anxious, and most likely, on asking the question, our own minds tell us, na bolna, na bolna, na bolna, ki suicidal thoughts nahi hai, na bolna. Okay, but the fact that somebody's told you already that they have thoughts of suicide, take it seriously. Okay, talk to them, listen to them, ask them relevant questions. You may not want to go into the depths and details, you want to give them the help that they need, and connect them to therapists, psychiatrists. Very, very important. Okay, as a student, it's important that you rope in a teacher, or maybe have like a support group that is formed. You know, call in the parents, speak to them, maybe in isolation, tell them, look, this is it. But that concern is important, letting the person know that, look, your safety is my priority and I want you to be safe, and therefore I need to tell somebody about this. Who do I tell me that? So if they have thoughts of suicide and they tell you, great, because they're that much self-aware, get them to a therapist. That's very important.
Okay, so there's one question which is
Mhm.
saying that if someone has lost their loved ones and they're already depressed and they feel that they have no one to talk to, so how can I play a role as a friend and get get him out of that situation?
That's a very, very intelligent question, I must say. Research says that one suicide in a family, one death by suicide in a family leaves 15 people emotionally injured. And what do we mean by emotionally It's not just a physical scar, right? That I put an ointment and a band-aid gets done. It's emotional injury. It's something within me that changes forever. My way of behavior, my way of dealing with things, everything changes about me and my response around. Okay, now if you get, if you are the person, it's important that you should speak to them, tell them you are there, let's talk. If they say nahi yaar baat nahi karni hai, still tell them, listen, there is this kind of affects you, I see it's impacting your behavior, I see this is what is going wrong, please let's talk about it, you're important. Okay, give them that due attention and with the intention that you want to help them.
Okay, so there's a question: what could help build up their trust, though a person really has such suicidal thoughts and find it hard to open up? When a person feels hard to open up, so again, how can we help? Again, a common question, but I think you should answer.
Sure. So, look, all of us have certain aspects of our lives that we don't want people to know of, or we want it to be quiet. We want it to be shh, you know. The fact that if you are an interventionist, if you get yourself trained, you will push them a little bit more and yet talk about it and say, listen, imagine if not talking about it is doing so much harm to you, what will talking about it? Can we give it a shot at least?
Okay,
Okay,
and it's
push
more
them.
about how can we build a trust? Like we can
Yes,
how
so
we can make the other person feel that yeah, you can trust on me. You can count on me.
absolutely. When we were babies, we didn't know that this was our mother, this was our father, and therefore I need to trust them, right? What happened? There was certain exchange of feelings, emotions, behaviors, examples, etc. that set it up saying, oh, I can trust them. My mom will not tell this to anybody. I can trust her blindly. Yeah. So trust is difficult to gain. Repo is easy to do. So you build a repo with the person and say, oh, okay, you've been having these thoughts. Look, you matter. You're important. Let's talk about it. We are not getting into positive psychology. Having said that, we don't say it's incorrect. It works. But we are not just sugarcoating it, saying, hey, there is hope, truth shall something, or let's, come on, you can do it. You fought it all this while. That doesn't work after a point, right? It's emotional distress and it's internal pain is a wound that's open and it's painful. So build a rapport. You come as a person, as an expert, that you know your business, you know what you're talking about, and then give them the help. I don't see any reason why um, they will not open up to you.
Okay, so the next question, which is coming up, that if a person is who's dealing and having these thoughts and in depression already, and is not open to seek professional help and only trust in the person, so give some tips that how we can deal with that person.
Right. So again, this is very common because we're all living in a we all understand the mental health has, right? So,
Sorry.
so when no worries. So when there is so much stigma around, if I tell somebody I'm going to a psychiatrist, there are chances somebody will say, "Ooh, really?" Rather than saying, I say going to a cardiologist is easier. Heart attack hi hai na. Okay, so we need to normalize this. The fact that somebody is not willing to take professional help, it's important that if the person is depressed, is the medication on? And for him to be on medication, he needs to go to an expert, and that is a psychiatrist. And if you explain them logically, support them and say, listen, I know this person. Can we do the call together? Can I come with you? Can we write to the person? Can we call the helpline at least? Okay. Do it together with the person so he feels more supported. And there are chances that he eventually seek the help because he knows there is an answer that he's going to get there.
Okay. So the next question, which is coming up, when they don't open up, that they engage in self-harming to ease the pain or have suicidal thoughts to ease the pain, but they strongly disagree to visit a therapist, what do we do then?
Okay,
Again,
so
a common kind
it's
of
the same.
question.
Yeah, it's the same question, right? I just want to give you an example before we wind up. Dipshika,
Yeah.
Niana was at a safe space, right? And me, we were at a cafe. This lady served us beautiful, like she was in a uniform, white shirt, trouser. She served us coffee. and the sleeves of her shirt were up, and we saw that there were marks all over her. Now, when we looked at her, me and Niana looked at each other. Niana got up and said, "ये क्या है, ma'am?" And she's like, "अरे कुछ नहीं, ये तो accident हो गया था ना. I fell down. इसके लिए stitches है." Now we could figure that these are not just mere stitches, right? We took her on the side. And we are psychologists. We are from this field. We understand what's going on. Do you want to tell us what it is? She said, "Yes, I would love to. But today I'm at work. I can't discuss it right now." So we said, "Okay, if we give you a number, will you call us?" She said, "Yeah." She called us the same very day. We spoke to her, got the details, got her connected to a psychiatrist, and now she's on medication and on therapy. So even though there is harm, we understand that first of all, a lot of us think it is attention seeking. We have to absolutely no red flag that it's not attention seeking. There is pain, and that is screaming out, and therefore they get the help that they need. And so a psychiatrist or a therapist is non-negotiable.
Okay, so I think I'll take the last question, which is
Sure.
about when we analysis the suicidal cases, we find
Mhm.
the reason may be very silly or simple. So, can we say that the present generation today are mentally weak or they are not able to overcome the crisis?
So this is where we draw that line. Number one, uh, they may be silly cases for you, but it's important for the person, and which is why we said get them the help that they need. It's not about me; it's about them. What that pain means for them, and if we are able to understand that, you are going to be non-judgmental towards them, and therefore give them the help that is required. We are not here to analyze in a microscope whether this is a fair reason for them to take a call. No, that's why we say suicide is the most preventable death if you give them the help that they need. So, number one, it's not silly reason or no. It may be for you, but it's not for them. The fact that they've reached here, there is something else going on. You need to explore that as an interventionist. Okay. Number two, let's say if what is the second part of the question, Deepshika?
Second part was that so can we say that today's generation is are mentally weak? So it's
So
kind of
I would
comment.
yeah, so I would say that it's about building resilience, right? We all want to be resilient, we want to raise resilience. Having said that, it demeans somebody who is taken their own lives, right? It takes a who wants to harm their own bodies? Tell me that. Who wants to do that? Nobody
No.
would do that, which means there is something else. And so when you talk about strength in love, hope in love, the direct opposite is weakness. It's not weak, it's about the pain that the person cannot take anymore. And if we are able to understand that, it's not going to be about weakness or strength, it's about what it means for the person, and so give them the help that's required.
Okay, so I think we are running out of time. So there are questions lying up, but I think we should end it
So
here.
perfect. So they
Or
can DM us if they have any more questions, Deepshika. They can also write to us, Madhuri at
yeah.
the rate in, and we'll be happy to help them. Having said that, become first responders, become certified first responders, and all your questions will be answered. And I'm saying that with experience, right? Thank you so much.
Okay.
So much, Dipshika, Gayatri, all the students, Sonia ma'am, Irene ma'am, for giving a safe space and me the opportunity. I hope this has moved you even one bit to understand that suicide is preventable. So let's break that stigma. Everything behind let's talk requires your effort and your intention. So let's be a part of the solution and not the problem, which is a stigma itself, right? Thank you
Yes,
so much.
ma'am. Thank you. Thank you so much. Now I would like to call Jeffina from MSW2 to present a vote of thanks to you.
Sure. Thank you, Jeffina.
So, on behalf of the Student Council and the entire College of Social Work Nirmala Niketan Autonomous, I extend a very hearty vote of thanks to Ms. Madhuri Ma'am from Safe Space Mumbai, who has blessed us with her presence and took out a valuable time And thank you for helping us to realize the significance of suicide first aid and how we should act during such situation. And I must mention my deep sense of appreciation for your work. And we all are inspired by your great words, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeffina. It's been a pleasure. Thank you. Wish you guys luck.
So, our next speaker for today is Ms. Sunitha Ramchandra. Ma'am is a financial service professional and a befriending international volunteer. She is currently a senior mentor and trainer at Samaritans Mumbai. Ma'am has volunteered for 7 years in the field of suicide prevention. She is a strategic planner with a strong execution bias. She possesses very strong communication skills and brings a high level of energy and passion and integrity to the task at hand. Over 3 years with Samaritans, she has worked closely with the director and senior to build a strong benchmark. We welcome you, ma'am.
Thank you, Gargi. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Am I audible?
Yes.
Okay. So, thank you to everybody at Nirmala Niketan. This is my third year running, coming to your college to talk to you all. And it's indeed a privilege to be here. The last couple of years around World Suicide Prevention Day, we had come and had sessions with you all on suicide and deliberate self-harm. And last year was just, to discuss suicide with all of you. I can see that, just from the comments, I can see that you all have had a wonderful session preceding mine. So even if there's any overlap or repetition, it shouldn't be a problem. We can just figure out, Gargi, please feel free to tell me if I'm repeating what has already been covered or something like that. And I think, thank you. So just at the beginning, she has given me a very glowing introduction, but I just need to inform you all that we are not professionals. We are just volunteers at Samaritans Mumbai. So volunteers at Samaritans Mumbai come from all walks of life, and they are of all age groups. So the youngest being about 18 or 19, and the oldest is about 82 years, 80 plus years. So we have anybody who has a passion for the cause and has the mind space and the time to be there for other people is welcome to volunteer with Samaritans Mumbai. So before I begin, I just wanted to thank all of you, because yesterday I wanted to just get an idea of what is it that you expect from the session, and I circulated a form, and I'm really happy that I've got almost 100 responses. So I think y'all are a very engaged crowd, and it's really a privilege to talk to y'all. So I think I landed up looking at most of it and using most of it till about 70 odd responses. But I have read each and every one of the 99 responses that have come my way. Thank you again for that. It's really wonderful to be here today. And without any further ado, I'm going to begin the presentation. Please just bear in mind that I would like it to be as interactive as possible. So even through the presentation, if you have any questions or thoughts, or you want me to pause somewhere, you can just put a comment in and Gargi will let me know about it. Trigger warning, already for an hour, you all have been discussing suicide. It could be a bit triggering. So I will be also putting up our resources. You could make a note of it. So you can reach out to talk in case something has set off. Because this is in the previous sessions that I took at Nirmala Niketan, I was in a classroom filled with students, so I could interact, and I had a plenty of one-on-one interaction subsequently as well. That's not going to be possible today. So please do reach out by all means. So I think let's begin. Gargi, can you see my screen?
Yes, ma'am.
Is my screen visible?
Yes, it is.
Fantastic. So we are Samaritans Mumbai. We are an emotional support and a suicide prevention helpline. I request everybody to just make a note of our resources. These are our phone numbers. We are open now between 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. Prior to the lockdown, we were open from 3 p.m. to 9 p.m. on all days. Our helpline email is talktosamaritans@gmail.com. You can write to us. You can completely hide your identity when you write to us by taking on any email ID that doesn't even cue your name. We are perfectly okay. Our website is Samaritansmumbai.com. We are available on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, but we won't be responding to DMs that seek emotional support. For emotional support, you'll have to call us or email us. Okay. So Samaritans Mumbai started in 1961 in India. In fact, it's the first Samaritans which was set up outside of UK. So Samaritans itself, Samaritans UK was begun by this priest called Chad Vera, who really wanted to be there for his parish to help them talk about things which have a lot of stigma attached to them. So primarily sexual concerns. And subsequently, it became a helpline across the country. They're pretty much Samaritans all over the world. We are also part of Befrienders worldwide, and Befrienders India itself has about 16 centers all over India. Our vision is for a society in which fewer people die by suicide. Please note fewer people, and during the discussion, I will be referring to fewer people as well. It's run completely by volunteers. As I said, they need not be from a psychology background. We provide all the training that they need. All that is needed is to have empathy and then have the discipline and commitment to be available. Our values are based on the very fact that anybody who has any difficult feelings, if we explore it, it could lead to some kind of alleviation of the pain that they're going through. So being listened to in confidence and accepted without prejudice. How we do it. Volunteers are trained intensively in listening skills. I'll be touching on some of the listening skills during the session today. At Samaritans, we handle all our callers confidentially and with complete anonymity. So there is no question of saying, passing any kind of judgment, no matter what. We do not advise, and we only explore how they feel. And a little more on this a little later in the discussion. So we pay attention. So we try our best to understand from their point of view. We are trained in developing our empathy in order that we are able to really get into their shoes and listen to them. Last year alone, we handled over 6,500 calls between phones and emails. We had about 53 volunteers we trained. At any point of time, we have about 35 to 40 active volunteers. Many of our volunteers do outreaches. So this is just a little bit about us. You can follow us on Instagram and pretty much see all our activity as well. Okay, this is just a rough sample of a month's data. It's not necessarily representative of every month. So 40% of our callers are below the age of 30. World over, below the age of 30 is considered for the young segment. We get about 20 calls a day, and a call could last as less as 5-10 minutes to as long as 2 hours, 2.5 hours even. We get more male callers than female callers. During the lockdown, we saw a huge rise in isolation, and we saw a very big rise in relationship problems. I think because there was a lot of constraints to people to move out, to be with their friends, or to get the therapy they need, or the help they need, or to be able to go to college or school or their workplaces, or to travel. With all that, it was enforced proximity at home. So there was a lot of relationship issues, either due to distance from people or too much proximity to people. There was a marked rise in depression that we saw. There was a lot of anxiety and loneliness that went up. People called just to talk about how COVID was impacting them as well. So there was a marked rise in distress that we did observe. Okay, so now let's talk. So when I was invited by Nirmala Niketan to talk about suicide, I just labeled it #Let's Talk Suicide. But we really are talking about what is going on in the mind in order that we are able to talk to them. So suicide itself could be an impulsive act or a rational, well thought out, well planned out act. But in almost all cases, there are warning signs given. There are trigger alerts. They are letting people know. So what is going on in the mind of a person? They are either caught between being unable to live because the pain of living is so high, and there is a strong urge to just escape the pain of living, and therefore there is an urge to die. Caught between the two and being pulled on two sides. So it's a very strong ambivalence that the person is feeling at that point of time. To die, it's not so simple because there is a fear attached to dying as well. So when the fear of the pain of living overrides the fear of dying, and then the person might land up taking some kind of a step. Active suicide ideation builds up over time. It could appear that, hey, this person had nothing wrong with them. Why did they suddenly die? Most probably they've been giving out signs and we did not pick up too many of those. It is highly possible that we pick up none of the signs as well. What we can try to do is discuss some of the signs, but by no means would I say it's exhaustive. It's not. What is going on with them? There's a lot of perturbation, lot of agitation, and repeated sharing and hints. I can't take this anymore. I want to run away. I just wish everything would end. I just wish that, I was not in the situation. I wish things would just not be there. I wish I was not there. There are a lot of these things. Let's also not forget that among young people, there is a lot of dark jokes and memes which are also pretty much out there. A lot of suicide jokes and a lot of self-harming jokes. Having said that, take it seriously. As I think the earlier speaker was saying, I just came in at the fag end and saw what she was saying about taking it seriously. So let's talk about what is going on in them. And we talk about that, there is something going on in the environment. Either they have not got into a school or college of their choice, either they don't have a job, or they're in acute financial stress, relationship problem, as we discussed, which was one of the top reasons why people call us. It could be it could be an unsuccessful marriage or a relationship. So there's a lot going on in the environment which keeps pressing down on the person. At the same time, there's a lot going on in the mind, as I spoke about earlier, about perturbation and agitation. And, that pain which is going on is pushing. So it's like the environment is pressing and the pain is pushing them. So they're just caught between the two. There's a lot of psychological ache. They're just hurting like anything and completely confused. Because amidst all this, they are also thinking how to end the pain and, what are the steps that they could think of taking. And at the same time, there is people around them and life is going on. So there's a lot of, they're very perturbed and confused as well. So amidst all of this, as you can see, there is nothing you can do about the environmental press. You simply cannot change the circumstances. You cannot solve the problem. What you can do is offer them emotional support, which I will be stressing upon through the presentation today. So the role of emotional support is, this is actually a quote that just knowing another person cared made me change my mind. Okay, so let's talk about some of the signs to look out for. Withdrawal from family and friends, it could be the other way around. Someone who's very introverted starts engaging a lot. Someone who's normally interacts with people could withdraw into themselves. So what you're really talking about is a change in behavior. Maybe they're self-harming. Self-harming does not automatically imply any suicidal thought or behavior, but it is possible that you can follow up on that, because there is a correlation between people who self-harm, who go down the road to be suicidal. Putting affairs in order, that is, suddenly, somebody comes who owes you something and hasn't seen you in ages, comes and says, hey, here is it. I just wanted to return it. I don't want to keep it with me. I want to return it. And you see that they're doing that with everybody around them. They're putting their affairs in order, maybe making sure that they're talking to everybody one-on-one to make sure that they're perhaps saying their goodbyes or, setting their affairs in order. Especially when you know that that person actually valued that possession, why are they giving it away? Writing a suicide note or goodbye letters to people. Uncharacteristic risk-taking or recklessness. So there's been a lot of times when, even on call, when I ask someone whether they have thoughts of suicide, they say no. But gradually when we are talking, turns out, and they say that, they're riding on their two-wheeler and sometimes they just feel like driving into oncoming traffic, or they cross the road without looking on either side of them. So there is some kind of risk-taking that is actually eroded at the self-preservation, which itself is a sign for you to look out. Maybe unexplained crying or emotional outbursts. They could say things like, what's the point? It's all my fault. I am to blame. I can't take this anymore. I'm on my own. No one cares about me. Nothing I do makes a bit of difference. It's beyond my control. Maybe they even just talk about death, or they talk about suicide. Maybe they talk about planning for suicide or talking about harming themselves. So there are 5 action points. This I took it from a website which is not India, which is why I blanked out the Lifeline number. First things first, ask them, are you thinking about killing yourself? When we talk about suicide, that's a question that we need to ask, because if you notice all the previous, you can say all this and you may not even have any thoughts of suicide. So you need to find out. The only way to find out is by asking the question, are you thinking about killing yourself? And the next step, keep them safe. That is, reduce access. I think the earlier suicide first aid person would have spoken about this as well. Reduce access to lethal items. Now, where we come in, emotional support, when we talk about it, is here. Be there. Listen carefully and acknowledge their feelings. We are there in step number 3 and step number 5. Stay connected, follow up and stay in touch even after the crisis is over. So help them connect. You can give them any helpline number. You just have to Google Samaritans Mumbai is one helpline. There are plenty of helplines. Please just Google and have a list of resources. Connect them to resources so they can reach out and talk to people. So a person in distress really needs someone who listens to them. So when we talk about emotional support, what we really mean is to accept that person and listen to them without necessarily needing to fix them. Fixing them is a role which is perhaps there for family or for friends, but at Samaritans, as volunteers, we can offer emotional support by listening to them. So we don't even attempt to give them solutions because we don't have any. So we listen to them. Maybe what you could do is also direct them to a mental health professional. Maybe they need to go to a psychiatrist. Maybe they need to go to a therapist. So they may need help because there is a strong pharmacological aspect and genetic aspect to suicide, that no amount of, it may be beyond you to help them in that area. There are professionals for this. So make use of all the resources available to you. Emotional support, accept them without judging. Show them the warmth and respect that no matter what you say, what you have done, what you plan to do in future, you are a person worthy of respect and we respect you. Convey the respect. It's not about words, it's about conveying the respect. And then, most importantly, take help yourself. The minute you engage with somebody and listen to them, especially if there are difficult feelings that the person is going through, you might yourself get triggered, or you yourself might have reactions to it. Because remember, you had to put your own reactions aside while you paid attention and listened to them. So make it a point to take help yourself. What are the feelings that the person could be going through? We spoke about agitation. We spoke about perturbation. We spoke about acute stress and distress. So these are all the feelings that the person could be feeling. This is like a laundry list or a bucket list of all the feelings that a person in pain can be feeling. Sadness, anger, shame, desperation, disconnection, hopelessness, worthlessness, loneliness, isolation, self-hatred. So when we talk about powerlessness, powerlessness is one of the key feelings. Powerlessness and shame often lead a person to harm themselves, because when they feel completely that they have no control over anything, even harming yourself is a way of taking back control. Suicide is ultimately the ultimate way of taking back control over your own life. So explore these feelings. You can just see by the list, there are so many here. It's not necessary that one person feels all of this. And again, further down, I will explain how it's important to factor in that different people feel different kind of things and respond differently to the same things. You remember there was a questionnaire that I sent out to all of you and you all filled. I thought you guys would be interested to know the kind of results that came out. So I just put in some of them. So one question that I had asked was, when someone who is distressed is talking, we can ask if they have thoughts of suicide. Can we ask if they have thoughts of suicide? I've only tabulated 75. I've got 25 more responses subsequently. So almost 50% said yes, we can ask. 33% said no, the others said others, and they gave a lot of explanation. So this is what I mean. There is a lot of similarity among a lot of you who are here. You'll have all come here to do this counseling and to be there for other people. But can you just see how different people respond to the same question so differently? Yeah. So what is the right answer? Can we ask them? Yes. When in distress, can we ask if they have thoughts of suicide? One of the most popular myths about suicide is most suicides happen suddenly without any warning. However, the fact is that the majority of suicides have been preceded by warning signs, whether verbal or behavioral. Of course, there are some suicides that occur without warning, but it's important to understand what the warning signs are and to look out for them. So there is no other way that you will know unless you mention it. If you talk about suicide, then the person opens up. I think I did know that there was a talk about stigma attached to it. So what would be our normal reaction if someone says that, they have thoughts of suicide? We'll be like, oh gosh, that's like the most extreme thing I've heard. No, life is too precious, etc., etc. Insert any amount of motivational, positive dialogues in the middle. How about we flip that around? We bring up the word suicide and talk to them, and then find out, whether the person is having any thoughts or not. Are we planting the idea in their head? Are we suggesting to them that, when you have thoughts of suicide, when you are mentioning suicide, when someone's already disturbed, is that becoming an option? 36% said yes. 40% said no. The others are sitting on the fence. They're not very sure. And a lot of them were also feeling awkward that how will we ask whether they're having thoughts of suicide? The myth is talking about suicide is a bad idea and can be interpreted as encouragement. The fact is, given the widespread stigma around suicide, most people who are contemplating suicide do not know who to speak to. Rather than encouraging suicidal behavior, talking openly can give an individual other options or time to rethink their decision. And if it is possible, it could land up preventing suicide. When someone is able to discuss their thoughts of suicide, because it's like they're able to talk about their pain, someone's listening to their pain, they're able to talk about it. So they talk about their pain to one person, to another person. The third time they go back to this one person, they're like, hey, we just spoke about it yesterday. Can we speak about something else? So the person also says, okay, and talks about something else. So the listener feels, okay, cool, this person is chill. But you know what the person is thinking? That I'm not going to be talking to this person. They're not listening to me. And this is about pain that can be broached. How are they going to broach words of suicide? It's up to us. When we are picking up the cues from them, we can drop in the word of suicide and talk to them. Obviously, we don't start the conversation like that. But if we don't introduce the word, then they would feel even more awkward to bring it up. There were some questions that came across that, is it only people with mental illness who can be suicidal? The answer is anybody can be suicidal. There is a correlation that between mental illness and suicidal ideation, but it does not mean that people who don't have mental illness may not be suicidal. So suicidal behavior indicates deep unhappiness, but not necessarily mental disorder. Many people living with mental disorders are not affected by suicidal behavior, and not all people who take their own lives have a mental disorder. So we asked another question. Talking about suicide makes them feel worse. Most of you were neutral. You all didn't know whether it makes them feel worse. You all did not know whether you all agree or disagree, which is still a good sign that you all were at least open to the concept that talking about it may not make them feel worse. So my question to you is, can emotional support help? So one of the myths about suicide is, once someone is suicidal, he or she will always remain suicidal. However, the fact is, heightened suicide risk is often short-term and situation-specific. While suicidal thoughts may return, they are not permanent, and an individual with previously suicidal thoughts and attempts can go on to live a long life. So, during the heightened suicide risk, I'd just like to share a little bit that there was this particular spot on the Golden Gate Bridge in California where a lot of people used to go there and jump off that particular spot, and it kind of became a little popular. So there was only one thing that the authorities did is they blocked off that little part of the bridge where people used to use to jump off. That's it. They didn't block off the whole bridge. They blocked off that part. And with that, the suicide rate just dropped on that. So it's not that there was no other place for people to do it. But the point is that during the heightened suicide risk, it takes a lot of planning and a lot of energy to reach that point to take the action required. So that is why we spoke about distancing the means earlier. So if in that point, if you can just distance how and be there to talk to them about it, it is possible that just by talking about it, the heightened suicide risk can come down. So let me give you another example. Many of you would have seen during like movies or TV shows or something like that, how a first responder behaves. So if there's somebody standing on the ledge of a building and wanting to jump off, typically abroad, at least fire trucks come and go to the rescue. So the first responder who goes there doesn't grab them and pull them back, talks to them, stands off the ledge and talks to them, and doesn't mind engaging in conversation for however long it takes until that person themselves decides that they are going to take a step back from the ledge. So at this point of the heightened suicide risk, there are 2-3 things that happened. One is the first responder or the person involved who is a listener, could be you, did not panic, did not overreact, or did not get, to save. The problem with trying to save is the person who feels better is you, not the person who is at risk. Because the person who is at risk is just postponing probably for another time. However, by engaging in a conversation with them and allowing them to talk about all the pain that they have, perhaps repeatedly, it is possible that they take the first step back. It's a long process and it calls for a lot of energy and a lot of patience and trust in the person. Okay, this is a beautiful one. Talking about suicide is an attention-seeking act. Okay, so 20% said yes, it is. They do agree that it's an attention-seeking fact. So actually almost 30% agreed, because 8.8% strongly agree that it's an attention-seeking act. Just talking about suicide, we've heard that myth, right? People who talk about it don't actually do it. We've heard about all of this. Suicide is a cowardly way out, and etc. People who talk about suicide do not mean to do it. That's a myth. In reality, people who talk about suicide may be reaching out for help or support. A significant number of people contemplating suicide are experiencing anxiety, depression, and hopelessness, and may feel there is no other option. So when we spoke about all the hints that a person is giving, talking about suicide is one of the biggest hints that they're giving. So engage with them. It's possible when you ask them that, you've been talking about suicide, or you're talking about ending your life. I mean, did you mean it? The person could say, no, I didn't mean it. That's fine. But one of the things that did come out in the question is the acute discomfort you felt in asking that question. Perhaps you think that the person would be offended. Perhaps you feel that the person would just say, what is wrong with you? Or maybe it's your own fear about talking about such a topic like suicide. It's a very biological requirement to keep us away from anything that can cause destruction of life. Acknowledge it. It's not easy to talk about suicide. It's absolutely not easy to talk about it ourselves if we feel it, or talk to people when we feel that are they having thoughts of suicide. It is difficult. It's not an easy thing to do. However, it doesn't only need trained volunteers at Samaritans or trained counselors or psychiatrists. It can be anybody. Some of the best listeners are people who have had perhaps no training. In fact, there was a very major campaign, I think, about a person who on the Golden Gate Bridge, spent most of his time at a particular part of the bridge just to talk to people who were standing alone and looking out over the bridge. He had no formal training. He was not part of any kind of first responder, officially, but he just took it upon himself to go and talk to people. So can it be attention seeking? Perhaps. The only way you'll know is by asking them. Okay. So I just like this, little diagram because it shows what is happening in the minds of the person. There is a lot of pain, and typically a person copes with pain by using certain resources. And during this time of extreme distress or despair, perhaps their coping resources are not sufficient. Maybe they feel exhausted. Maybe they've just been struggling with these problems for so long that they, cannot cope with this pain anymore. So as you can see by the balance, they're just having a lot more pain at this point, and the coping resources is all the way there. To bridge this gap is where emotional support comes in. When in distress due to external pressure, internal stress, being unable to cope, they may have mental health issues also, and they could also be suicidal. So this is where emotional support comes in handy. First and foremost, emotional support calls for empathetic listening. I'm going to be showing you all a little video after this presentation on the difference between empathy and sympathy. So sympathy is where we were all coming from when we filled up the questionnaire by saying, it's awkward. I don't know whether I can ask them this. When you are doing this, who are you with? You are with your own discomfort. It's natural. But can we instead be about the pain that the other person is going through? Essentially, empathy is when we are with the other person's pain. We are there to look at the other person's pain. Sympathy is when I'm caught up with myself, either in solution giving, advice giving, wanting to rescue that person, pointing out silver linings, saying that, you're still so fortunate. How many people have lost their jobs in COVID, and you at least have this. So that is, so the person just lands up feeling worse because they've just suddenly, what was making them feel really bad was pointed out to them that they had no right to even feel that way. So empathetic listening is when you put all these judgments aside, all value judgments aside, and you are just with the pain of the other person. Empathy is to be with the other person in their space, from their point of view. Yeah, we'll do a little bit more on the discussion later. Non-judgmental. We all will nod and say, yeah, we can't judge. Guess what? We can't help but judge because we have a value system ourselves. We believe that certain things are worthy of pain. In fact, one of the questions I saw in the chat box was, what if the reasons are too silly? So that's coming from a place of judgment. You have already said that the other person's problems are silly. And they may be silly, but that silliness is from your point of view, not from that person's point of view. For the person who is caught in that, that's their whole world. There is at that point no kind of balance to say what is silly, what is not silly. It doesn't matter. It's what you think about it. What does that person think about it? That's the point. That's empathy. Build and maintain trust. Building trust is not easy, and it goes a long way to be there for them in their space, including giving them time to take their time to think about whether to talk now or not talk now. How do we convey care and warmth? We convey care by paying attention to them, maybe allowing them to take their pace, conveying to them the respect that you're feeling for them simply because they are right there in that situation and they've reached out to you. Sometimes all you can really say is, I'm just really glad that you are talking about it today. That in just that one thing, you'll end up conveying more care and warmth than perhaps 100 solutions that your mind is teeming with, Take help from professionals. As I said, there is a lot that we don't know. There could be a genetic component. There could be a mental health problem. They may just need medication. We do not know. Encourage them to reach out to professionals. And I think I did see in the earlier session, she spoke about still being there with them. In Samaritans itself, there are a lot of our callers who are going to professionals and they still come and talk to us. And in fact, the professionals tell them to come and talk to us because we have the time. We will listen to you. Take an hour, take 2 hours. And you know what? This conversation doesn't have to end in a resolution. It can just be that you're telling me how you feel. We are here to listen to you. That is emotional support. Offer follow-up support and care. Every single call of ours, we pretty much end it like that, saying, you can call us back. Anytime that you have difficult feelings that you want to talk about, we are here between 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. Please do call us back. So we always make it a point to end most of our calls like that. And outside the Samaritans context, the way we do it, ask them, would it be okay if I asked you about this later? Would it be okay if I checked in with you? Would it be okay if we speak, maybe depending on the immediacy of the care the person needs? But follow up. When you tell them you're going to follow up, you have to follow up. Take help yourself. So you don't need to reveal any of the personal details that the person has spoken to you. But if it left you feeling awkward or worried or triggered, please speak about it to somebody you trust. You absolutely don't have to break the confidence by sharing what that person said. It's enough if you share how it made you feel. Take help yourself. Okay, so when we speak about listening, the next slide, I'm going to show you all some of the aspects of listening, active listening. Listen carefully. So you not only have to pick up verbal, but also non-verbal cues. So that's like if they say, oh, I'm fine, but they don't look fine. So it's not enough just to say, you said you're fine. Say, you don't sound very fine. Is everything okay? Would you like to talk some more? Pay attention and convey interest. Conveying interest not in a creepy way, but in that you're actually listening to what they have to say. Doesn't it happen that when you start talking, someone just starts looking away and gets distracted, maybe by their phone or maybe by just something else that is happening? What is that? How does that leave you feeling? You're like, I'm not going to talk anymore because the person is not interested in what I have to say. Never do that to the other person, especially when it's a serious conversation that you are engaging in. So what we're essentially doing here is talking about creating a space where the person who's in distress can talk. So what is very important in that space is to convey care, to convey attention, listen carefully, pick up verbal, non-verbal cues, identify underlying emotions. Remember, we listed out a lot of the emotions they could be feeling. So it's about identifying the underlying emotions. So in a group of the 100 responses that I got, it's not like there was a uniformity. Everybody felt differently about many things. Similarly, the person who you are talking to, who's in distress, may not be feeling all of them. They may not be feeling what somebody else may feel. In fact, they probably are not feeling what you would feel in that situation. So a lot of times we assume this has happened to them. They must be feeling like this. Guess what? That is sympathy again, because you are back with yourself. You are assuming that they feel like this because you probably would have felt like that. How about checking with them what they feel? So identifying underlying emotions is the key part of emotional support. Hence the word emotional support. Pick up the emotions. And when you identify it, play it back to them. Reflect it back to them and ask them, I'm just sensing from your tone that you're feeling terrible, terribly frustrated. Is that true? Is that what you feel? Ask them that back. So the person probably says, yes, that's exactly what I feel. Or absolutely not, I'm angry. Okay, now you're angry. Go ahead, tell me more. So picking up underlying emotions is the key to emotional support. The support part is encouraging them to share more about it. Not that, okay, so you're angry, what else? You spoke about being angry. Do you feel angry a lot of times when these things happen? When you say you feel angry, what are the kind of thoughts? Would you say that you're very strongly feeling like this? So to understand the extent of the emotion and what that is making them feel, do they feel destructive? Do they feel self-destructive? So there are so many nuances to a feeling. So the minute we hear the label of a feeling, we think we've understood. But emotional support is where we don't stay there and we go deeper. Because remember, we're getting it from the perspective of the person who's feeling it. So to continue listening, keep your reactions under control. In other words, when I hear the word suicide, I feel scared. That's fine. I'll deal with my fear later. Come back to what the person is speaking. So keeping your reactions under control and maintaining the focus on the speaker for the purpose of the space in which the speaker is able to speak about whatever they feel. And then summarize what you have picked up. Summary is very important because they begin to understand that you have understood them. So active listening comprises of all of these: verbal, non-verbal cues, observing body language, neutral technique, keeping your own reactions at bay, Paraphrasing is summarizing. There's also summarizing. Self-awareness. So my reaction to them or what I feel is coming. I know that this is how I am feeling. It's not about what they are saying. It's about what I am feeling. Fine, I'll deal with that later. Yeah. Questioning them. Questioning them, not like, why are you feeling this way? Come on, that doesn't sound like much. You shouldn't feel that way. That's not the meaning of questioning. Questioning means when you say that, you have nothing left. What do you mean by that? Do you mean that you want to end it all? When you say you want to end it all, do you have thoughts of suicide? So all questioning is not about suicide, but since this workshop is about suicide, I'm emphasizing that people could be in a lot of distress without having any thoughts of suicide. Either ways, emotional support exists. We can practice emotional support to help people vent out their feelings. Clarifying technique is one of the most important things because, again, remember when I spoke about we are assuming that they feel this way? Rather, we ask them. It sounds to me like you're very frustrated. Would you say so? So I'm clarifying with them. Are they feeling frustrated? Okay. Now, what do we do when, remember we spoke about the 5 steps of how we respond to distress. I'm just going to expand on all of it a little more. What are the things we can say? We can say things like, which are very non-judgmental. I'm worried about you because you haven't seemed like yourself. You've been so quiet. You've been so withdrawn. You haven't been responding to any of my texts. Is everything okay? I just wanted to touch base with you to find out how you're doing. I noticed that you've been very sad or upset or withdrawn or whatever the behavior that you noticed. Is everything okay? You could even phrase it very differently. You could just say that, what's going on with you? Would you want to talk about it? How are you doing? Oh, it's a lot that you're going through. How are you doing? What can I do to help you? Have you been able to speak to anybody else so far? Would you want to consider speaking to some professional or to your parents? I don't know. Do you have any friends you trust that you could talk to about this? But I'm here right now. Would you like to talk to me about how you feel? I want to help you. I'm here for you. You don't have to talk to me right now if you're not ready. You can talk to me whenever you're ready. So you see, there are various ways in which you can convey your care. Conveying the care is the most important part of this. When we're responding, when people are dropping hints of suicide, as we discussed, so we can ask them, is it too much for you to bear? Is this pain too much for you to bear? So yeah, we don't come right out and ask them that, do you have thoughts of suicide? We could build up to it and ask them, is it too much for you to bear? Does it all seem like too much at times? Are you having any thoughts of harming yourself? Are you having any urges to end your life? If they say yes, okay, now that's the next thing, right? What if they say yes, then what do we do? You don't have to do anything at that point of time. You can continue talking to them. You can ask them, have you made any plans? Would you want to tell me more? When you say that, yeah, you are thinking of suicide, what have you thought? Do you want to tell me more? So we spoke about this myth, right, a little earlier, but I want to stress it once more. Are you putting the idea of suicide into the person's head? So you can't make a person suicidal by showing your concern. In fact, giving a person who has thoughts of suicide the opportunity to express his or her feelings can give relief from isolation and pent-up negative feelings. Has it happened to you that, when you're in the grip of some feeling, you feel that nobody can understand me? Because what I am feeling is something that nobody will even get. So if you've ever felt that way, you can just imagine when you are having thoughts of suicide, how much more marked it will be. You absolutely cannot believe that somebody would ever understand. And there's so much of natural recoil from the word, even from among the group of you. We cannot ask about suicide. We want to save people from suicide. But how can we save people from suicide when we don't know who are the people who are having thoughts of suicide? When we're taken by surprise or blindsided, that's when we come to know. But people have been giving signs, right? So unless we have a conversation around it, how would we ever come to know? And then how can we ever save them if we didn't even know that they were suicidal in the first place? Okay, so responding to suicidal behavior, the whole idea is, remember the pain which was way heavier than the coping resources which was way lighter? The idea is to increase the coping resources until it can balance with the pain. So you can reduce the pain, you can increase the coping resources. How can you reduce the pain? You can reduce the pain by helping them talk about it. Talk about it endlessly, if required, again and again and again. And no, there is, the natural impatience of saying, yeah, you said this before. Maybe you can respond differently when they're repeating themselves. You can summarize. Remember, that was one of the things on the wheel. You can speak to them and say, you've spoken about this in depth, that, all this is making you feel very defeated. Do you still feel that way? They say yes, blah, 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 and talk about it. Listen to it. And when you're listening to it, if they're talking the same things that they've said before, you can summarize even more to them. You spoke that, because of this, not getting good marks, being worried about your future prospects, the problems at home, you really don't know how you're going to cope, and you just feel completely defeated. We had spoken about this. Do you still feel the same way? Would you want to talk some more? Let them talk more. One of the signs of a person who is caught in that, they need to talk about it as many times as they need to, until one day they're like, I'm done talking about it. I'm done. Even that is something you need to look out for. One of the warning signs is also that a person who's leading up, to suicide talks about it endlessly, again and again and again, giving hints, talking to different kinds of people, hoping somebody is going to talk to them and acknowledge, the pain that they're in. And then suddenly one day they stop talking about it. Everyone around heaves a sigh of relief. Okay, this person is over the worst. Now they're not going to do anything because they're over it. We don't know that. Can we clarify with them? Because when we think they are over it, maybe what they are over is trying to tell people how they feel, because they haven't got the support that they needed. So look out for those signs as well. Any change in behavior, any substance abuse, any kind of recklessness or behavior that is not keeping, self-preservation. All these are kind of behaviors that you need to question. You don't have to jump to the idea of suicide. You can lead up to it, but eventually talking about it normalizes the conversation. The entire purpose of today's sessions and World Suicide Prevention Day and all such other endeavors that everybody is taking up is to just normalize the conversations, to try and take away the gasp of horror that we feel. To say, okay, let's talk about it. So what all can we do when we're responding to suicide behavior? As I discussed, we can't change the environmental press, but we can focus on the feelings of the person. The other very interesting thing is that the energy that is used to build up to act on suicide, it requires energy. Talking at that point of time helps the pain to come down, and that does land up diffusing some of the energy needed. Maybe you just buy some time and they say, maybe I postpone it to tomorrow. And in the bargain, in the meantime, their coping resources can kick in. So that's possible. One of the very key things to not do in emotional support is to distract them. That, okay, let's do something else. I know you said this, but we talked about it, right? We're done. Let's go do something else. Guess what? The person will say, okay. But the point is they haven't finished talking about it. So distracting them is not at all of help to them. It helps you because you don't want to hear it anymore. But it does not help the person who's in pain. Avoid giving solutions. And let me tell you why we avoid giving solutions. Because at that point of time, for a person who has no hope, you give them a solution, say, do this. They're very grateful. They say, okay, I'm going to do it and I'm going to fix everything. Do you know that it's going to fix them? Do you know that if they do that, it's going to change everything for them? What if it doesn't work? Then the last hope is gone away too, right? Instead, can we talk to them and ask them, do you see, when you look ahead, do you see any options? Would you want to talk to me about those options? I can hear you out. I can't tell you what to do, but I can be here for you while you're figuring out. So trivializing, giving solutions actually lands up perhaps at times making it worse for the person, because the second thing is the person can't take your advice because they're not up to it. And then where does that leave them? That just means they can't come back to you to talk about it. You're not the first person in the world to fix a problem by saying, you have a broken relationship. There's so many buses. You can just go catch the next bus. There's so many other people. You can just, the world is filled with people. You can just say any number of things, right? But it's not like the person doesn't know it. Honestly, every time I open my WhatsApp, there are so many of these positive messages that keep coming in. So it's not that they are not getting it either, So the point is to be there with them in that. Ask them. If they say yes, they are having thoughts of suicide, ask them, what have you thought about? When do you plan to do it? Why are you asking them? Not because you're curious, but you need to understand just how much at risk are they, And then we spoke about distancing the means, continuing to talk, taking community help, reaching out to family, perhaps reaching out to, ideally encourage them to do it. If they reach out for support, it's like what I was talking about earlier, that a first responder, when talking to a person on the ledge, would rather engage with the person until the person on the ledge themselves step off the ledge. Similarly, encourage them to take help rather than you enforcing help on them. Of course, except in the case of minors, that's a very different case. But at Samaritans, we don't do any of that because we are anonymous and confidential helpline. We are encouraging them to talk about their coping resources and assuring them that we are going to be there with you while you find your coping resources. So one of their coping resource could be you. Just the fact that you accepted them and listened to them. Yeah. Offering emotional support helps to reduce the psychological ache which we spoke about and the perturbation. So encourage them to seek professional help and be mindful of this emotional time and stay in touch during this critical window. So this is Samaritans Mumbai. So I just want to end my presentation and then start taking questions from you all. I want to end it by saying that if you or anyone you know is in distress, despair, depressed, or even suicidal, please reach out to Samaritans Mumbai. Your sharing stays anonymous and confidential and you will not be judged. These are our resources. Please make a note of it. And with that, I come to the end of my presentation.
So thank you so much, ma'am. We can now have question and answers.
Yeah.
So people can share their questions on the chat and we can just pick them up. So we have a few of them. I'll just read that out for you.
Can I just pick up a few that I can see here?
Sure, ma'am.
Is suicide related to impulsiveness? I don't know if some have already gone up, Gargi, so please feel free to draw my attention back to those, but I'll just pick up from what I can see here. Okay, prior to that, if a person seems troubled, is it safe to ask if they're thinking about hurting themselves? Can asking increase the danger of suicide? Yeah, that's a very good question. It's very safe to ask them if they're thinking about hurting themselves, but it has to be asked in an appropriate way. So it's very important to create an appropriate space in which you are talking. So not in a casual way like, hey, I hope you're not planning to hurt yourself. What do you think the person's going to answer? Ask them. Try to find a space where it's just the two of you. And, there is a trust and a bond that you have built up by listening to how they feel. So over a period of time, as you are exploring how they feel and you've conveyed to them, you are available, it's very safe to ask them. It doesn't plant the idea in their head, because if only the mention of the word suicide or self-harm were to plant the idea in their head, I guess we all have to stop reading newspapers or reading the internet, going on internet at all. Because right from the celebrity suicide that we had just a couple of months back, it's all over the news and the statistics are out there. So talking about it in a safe kind of an environment, which is based on confidentiality, trust, acceptance, warmth, is very safe. Is there such a thing as rational suicide? Okay, so before that, there's a question, if a person in depression, how can it come? So as I said, we are not professionals about depression and how to overcome mental illness or what is the medication needed. You will have to go to psychiatrists or mental health professionals. We are volunteers who are working in this area of suicide prevention. Okay, so is there such a thing as rational suicide? Is there such a thing as an impulsive suicide? So there are all kinds of, in that sense, stressors that lead to this. We have also heard about political suicide. We've heard about farmers who suicide because they are in such because of drought, or they don't have the resources. There are people who have planned their suicide right down to a T, right from writing notes, taking care, putting their affairs in order. Um, just today I was talking to one of a psychiatrist friend of mine who was talking about this rational suicide, where they don't have any outstanding problem as such in their life, but they just do not see the point of living, and maybe they've thought it through very, very calmly. So what I would recommend is, rather than trying to label the kind of suicide about impulsive or rational, talk to them, get it from them. What is it? As far as impulsivity is concerned, generally there was a lot of concern in the forms as well about saving young people from suicide. One of the characteristics of younger people is the impulsivity. To think is to act. So the gap between thinking and actually acting is much less. So your window may also be less. Hence, rather in that time, then not asking, ask and talk to them. Enable them to feel comfortable to talk about it. Impulsivity is something that is an area of concern. Young people also tend to think a lot in black and white. If this doesn't happen, nothing is going to work. So the complete 0-1, either it's a success or a complete failure. So that kind of thought, impulsivity is a problem. Rational thinking is also can be a problem, because when they've planned everything, it may be a bit harder to find the window as well. So be open to all kinds. Don't have any preconceived notions when you go into the space of talking to somebody. Okay, since it's a stigma, can we keep it as a stigma and then go about helping about it for someone who needs help? How can we help to break their feeling of being skeptical of getting genuine help? Trust has to be earned. People, even on our helpline, a lot of people call us and say, can you tell us what to do? You mean you don't give us solutions, so we just have to talk and that's enough? Yes, it's not enough, but it's a start. So if someone is skeptical about taking help, perhaps, their life experiences have led them to be skeptical. So you can't tell them, listen, it's going to be fine, reach out for help. When a person is not convinced about reaching out for help, I think try to have a conversation. One of the things we really say, emphasize on, is to just have a conversation at their pace. Your need to save them is not more important than their comfort level. Talk to them, establish a comfort level. It could take some time, but if you convey a consistency in your care, it is possible that maybe they don't reach out to you, but they do reach out to somewhere else. You can't fight with life experiences by just, telling them what to do. You need to hear them out. Where are they coming from? When they feel skeptical, where are they coming from? How can you help people who have attempted suicide and survive? How can you stop them from making additional attempts? People who have attempted to end their lives are at a much higher risk in the next 48 hours to, a week. Much, much higher risk. So that is the time when typically there is very strong medication given to them. They're not left alone at that time. So again, this is all under the purview of medical health professionals. As volunteers, we are not qualified to speak about it. But even in those windows, emotional support helps. How are they feeling? Now that they tried and, they are alive, probably in pain, how are they feeling? Can we just talk to them and accept them without the stigma and without, saying things like it failed, suicide attempt that failed? Can we talk to them? How are you feeling right now? Because the pain which led them to take that step has not gone away. The only thing is additional pain has come on to them because they have tried and they're still right here. So in order to stop them, from the point of view of emotional support, you have to be extra sensitive to be available to them and to really talk to them and engage with them. It doesn't have to be verbal. Sometimes in Samaritans, one of the things we say is that you don't even, if talking is difficult, can we just share silences with you? We'll just be here with you. And Speaking from my own experience, just talking about pain here, not about suicide, but I remember the night when my father passed away, and like those days, bodies used to be kept on ice. I was just sitting there through the night in such desolation, and I just stayed up all night there. And one of my friends from childhood, who she and I hadn't probably spoken for 10 years, because she went on to do her medicine, I went on to do my MBA, and we weren't even, but she just came and sat next to me throughout the night and never said a word. She just sat there. And from time to time, she would just maybe get me a cup of tea or just sit there. And I do remember she spoke about very banal stuff, like what is her sister doing or what's my sister doing. And when I didn't really want to engage, it was fine. She just sat there. I'm talking about 30 years back. My father passed away 30 years back. But that moment of kindness and empathy remains with me. So you can convey your care in various ways. It's not only emotional support is verbal to some extent, but remember, pick up non-verbal cues, which means also you can offer non-verbal support as well. So if a person is ghosted and feels unworthy and gets into self-doubt, how can we talk to them? Reassure them that they can talk to you about what they are feeling, that you won't judge them. They can talk about how it feels to be ghosted. What does feelings of unworthiness mean to them? Accept that they're feeling that way. An instinctive reaction is to tell them, you shouldn't feel unworthy just because you're ghosted. Can't you see your family loves you? Can't you see so many people like you? They know that. Point is, right now, they're smarting so much by the pain of that, they're not able to see anything else. Rather, help them talk about the pain. So there's no point trying to reduce the pain by pointing out other aspects. What's more important is to help them talk about the pain. Do we believe that talking helps? I think fundamentally we have to ask ourselves that question. If we believe that talking helps, even about very difficult feelings, then we would not hesitate to do that. So if this person is ghosted and they're feeling unworthy, we can tell them, and convey our respect to them by paying attention, by listening to them, taking their perspective, all the things we spoke about through the conversation. Stay with the pain. Gargi, would you want to pick up some question in case I missed any?
So, ma'am, we also have one anonymous question.
Yeah,
I'll read
sure.
that out.
Go ahead, please.
In a situation where someone has called up Samaritans helpline for support and is discouraged by their parents, saying that if you tell someone, they will take an advantage of you. In situations wherein parents don't understand therapy or counseling, what can be done?
Yeah. Thank you for that question, Gargi. I didn't even read it. Thank you so much. This is very difficult, and I really feel the pain that the person must be going through. It is a fact that the stigma is so much that reaching out for help is one of the most difficult things to do. What I can assure you from the point of view, there are two parts to this, really. One part is to assure you that at Samaritans, your call is completely anonymous and we maintain confidentiality. So you don't need to tell us your name. In case you choose to email us for support, you can create an email ID that doesn't even give us your name. So your anonymity is complete. We won't know your gender. We won't know your age. So you can talk to us completely. We maintain no records of what you have shared with us. We maintain statistical purposes. We have records like how many calls, what's the age, and that too you don't need to tell us. It's just, So from us, even if your parents were to call us, we would never reveal what happened in the call. Rather, we would probably talk to your parents about the concern that they are feeling, So from the point of view of Samaritans, space completely. And we are hoping that by having talks like these to normalize reaching out, normalizing the conversation and reaching out for support, we hope to very organically to create a change where everybody receives the support that they need from family to reach out for help. It's not something that I can solve or give you a solution for. I can feel your pain, and all I can say is we are here should you choose to reach out. And maybe you would find that odd friend or that odd relative or somebody who you are able to talk to, and you are able to, take the support you need. And eventually, maybe also muster up to have that conversation if required to reach out for medical help. Meantime, we are here for you. You can talk to us.
Ma'am, we'll take more 2, 3 questions and I
Yeah.
guess we'll wind it up.
Okay.
So, if a person who was depressed and suicidal suddenly seems to feel better, does this mean they are no longer at risk for suicide?
So we spoke about it a little earlier in my presentation. I spoke about it. Probably they're at a higher risk. Probably they're at a lower risk. There is no one size fits all. I think you're beginning to get that from what I'm saying. It's not like it's a technique that works in every case. Like I said, when I did the survey and I got 100 responses, no two responses were similar. They were similar, but not identical, right? So similarly, if I gave you the same form today to fill after the session, you would probably fill it differently. You have changed. You have changed differently from the others. So I don't know. But all I know is talk to the person, ask them. They continue to be at risk. How much at risk? You would only come to know by talking to them. So don't jump to conclusions. Remember, when we conclude that they're fine, it's about us. But when we ask them, it's about them. That's empathy.
Right. So, one last question.
A couple of questions, actually. If I can just pick up a couple, then Gargi, you can
Sure,
ask me
ma'am.
some more. Okay.
Sure.
So, one question which I wanted to address is too much projection of the media today regarding the suicidal cases, especially the cases of celebrity influencing the present generation. Is it true? Unfortunately, because of the way the media is reporting it, there's a lot of irresponsible coverage of suicide in dramatic terms. And the media we have been really working with the media not to reveal the means, like how did they die. That is very triggering for people who are already having thoughts of suicide, for the means to be displayed either like a visual or stated in the headline, and the sensationalist headlines. It is quite triggering, and media has a role to play in very sensitively conveying information, because there is an influence, especially of celebrities, among young people. So it could be triggering, and it's up to us to also have conversations around it, because I know personally that one of my friends was acutely triggered by the recent celebrity suicide, and she is not a young person. She was acutely triggered, and she kept talking to me about how she keeps watching all the videos again and again, and videos that should not have been out on the net. So I did ask her, and she was triggered and quite suicidal by it. So there is an influence that the media plays, and I really request everybody, whoever has any connections, to continue, talking about sensitive, non-toxic communication. So we convey the news, but not necessarily dramatize it. So that is one thing that I did want to say. And the other thing that I needed to pick up, how are young children who might not even have heard of suicide feel suicidal when they are in a phase of heightened emotion or sadness? That's a very good question, and I'm afraid the news is not very good around this. Till a few years back, it was understood that below the age of 9, generally children don't have suicidal ideation. But with the kind of social media and how people are, like, they're just more open constantly on their devices or tablets or whatever. So there is an increased risk, and I'm afraid that the age is coming down. It's no longer 9. It's actually, even we find it has been reported that younger people have had suicidal ideation. So yes, to be very careful. And so there is to always be mindful, ye to bacha hai, ye kya janta hai, and they will not be thinking, is not unfortunately relevant anymore. Amidst that playfulness, there is angst. And amidst being on the net, there may be predators. So we have to have conversations. Basically, my underlying message is you will not know till you talk to them. And so you need to talk to them. Gargi, over to you. Yes, as Samaritans, we do refer to professionals if mental health if required. We do have a professional unit in Samaritans itself. We refer to them if it's required. But most of the times, we do leave it up to the caller to reach out for professional help. We don't suggest that to them. Yeah, Gargi.
Yes. Thank you so much, ma'am. I'm sure
Any other
people
questions,
and
Gargi?
students.
Because I couldn't see quite a bit that scrolled up.
No,
So,
ma'am. I guess we've
okay.
covered most of them. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So as I shared with you yesterday about my questions, and I am sure that the question is not there anymore, and also the students would know how to respond to people who will be having suicidal thoughts. So I would like to call upon Altamash to give the vote of thanks.
Hello, ma'am.
Hi, Altamash.
Hello, ma'am. On behalf of College of Social Work, Nirmala Niketan, I would like to thank Sunitha Ramchandran, ma'am, from Samaritans Mumbai. Thank you, ma'am, for making us understand the importance of emotional support in preventing suicide. You made us realize how our emotional support towards someone can, save their life and make them even feel better. Thank you so much for enlightening us with all the knowledge and taking us one step closer in becoming better versions of ourselves. Thank you from all the students and our faculties. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Gargi.
Dipshika, you're muted.
Thank you, Altamash. So now we would like to share a video with you guys, which a short film which has been prepared by the students, and also teachers have a really good work done by that. So please have a look at that. Gargi, can you please share the video? Gargi can't hear the Gargi can't hear the audio. So try sharing it once more. I'm unable to hear the audio.
Hey you. Yes, you. Have you ever felt so low that you thought it's the end? Can't stretch anymore? Maybe you'll fall. This is beyond what I can bear. Is this really beyond what you can bear? Look down at your feet. Come on, look down. Listen to it. It will tell you how you survived through those tough times. Those thoughts where you trembled once, twice, or many times. Those hard roads you chose in life without any support. Those lonely paths that you walked. Never feel defeated. You have survived worse than this. Pick yourself up. You are unique. And inspiration for many. Beyond all tears, heartbreaks, and thoughts that it's the dead end. There lies a sleeping child who learned to stand after thousands of falls. A smart learner who learned multiple languages and concepts right from nothing. And above all, a strong personality who survived and fought in life all these years. To watch this video today. You just have to wait him or her. So, let's talk it out. Maybe we could help ourselves or someone. Come on, let's talk. Let's talk. Let's talk. Let's talk.
Dipshika, you muted. So that was a beautiful video. So, like every year, we take a suicide prevention oath. This year, too, we would like to take an oath. So, I call upon Jeffina to take the suicide prevention oath.
Yeah, so students, if it is possible, could you please repeat after me? I pledge my support. On this day of World Suicide Prevention, I pledge my commitment to the theme Choose Life, Save Life. I pledge my commitment today to myself, my family, my community, and the entire human race that I will be a steward of creation and life, that I will remain faithful to this sacred trust and be constant in safeguarding the dignity of every human life till my last breath, that I will work every day in building resilience, faith, and hope in myself and others so life's challenges can be dealt with gracefully. That I will celebrate each day the abundance, the miracle of life. I will remember the divinity within me and sacredness of my being, of my life, and nurture it through concerted action. I hereby assure that I will celebrate life with its joy and pain. I promise I will never let go. I will never quit. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jeffina. So, we have come to the end of the session. On behalf of the Student Council of College of Social Work Nirmala Niketan Autonomous, we would like to thank each one of you to join in with us today.
Our first and foremost thanks to our college principal, Dr. Lidwin Dias. Thank you, ma'am, for giving us this opportunity, and our special guest, Ms. Madhuri Dadia from Safe Space India, and Ms. Sumita Ramchandra from Samaritans Mumbai. Our student council convener, Elvis sir, our faculty members, Sonia ma'am, Irene ma'am, Pallavi ma'am, Alban sir, and Samir sir for the constant support and guidance. Thank you to all the faculty members of CSWNN for being the part of this program, all the students who made beautiful posters and poems, students who were part of the short film Let's Talk, all those who were behind the scenes editing, giving final touches for the event, our technical team, our creative team, and our organizing team. A big thank you to everyone for making this event success. Thank you
Thank you
so
so
much,
much.
everyone.
And also do comment and like our channel on YouTube. Thank you so much.